we have the electronic communications policy, and I will once again defer to Griffin to talk about that a little bit, but basically it directs all communications through Griffin, so he can filter and funnel the information and keep on top of what everything that's going on.
Sure. So to expand on that briefly, the Saugatuck Township Board adopted an electronic communications policy in 2006. Electronic communication is now more necessary than ever for modern operations, and the current policy that's in place is no longer consistent with our current practices. Because of that, staff has reviewed it and made recommendations for how it could be amended to better fit our current, not only our current operations, but the direction the township is moving. But similarly to the other policies, it needs to be adopted by the township board, so I look for your feedback and comments if there's any concerns. The proposed motion is to adopt the updated policy as submitted, but if there are concerns, if there are questions, it's also appropriate to table that for a future meeting. Again, like all of these policies, it's important that the township board not only understands them, but is fully bought into them to ensure we can effectively operate. So I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions, but as the supervisor mentioned, the biggest changes is it has updated the policy from that communications only can occur from the township clerk or the secretary of the public body, and moves that more towards board chairpersons, the township manager, or other staff is designated by the township manager. And an example of that would be zoning administrator Lene Wells would need authorization to be able to communicate with a quorum of the planning commission when it comes to distributing information, similarly to how I distribute information to all of you.
How is this different? This really concerns me, so we can table or we can talk. It doesn't really matter to me. How is this, the new one, any different than the Open Meetings Act? And I ask this question because elected officials, we are governed by the state law. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm very reluctant to approve anything about this policy based on the history of the township. Based on why this was designed, why it was amended. I only had 15 minutes to look on the MTA website. They had nothing like this. All they had was, that I could find, but again, 15 minutes is not enough time for research. Everything you covered really well in the personnel policy, those are the kind of electronic policies I've read. They deal with staff, what they can and cannot do. They usually come along with disciplinary actions, which certainly would be inappropriate in this. I am not for having, I understand why this is done, but I think we all understand the Open Meetings Act, and I would definitely not approve any, whether filtering might not be the correct word, but having any of it go through designated persons, whether it's the supervisor or the manager or anyone else, based especially on the history, not only of this organization, but something I encountered in a very large institution that kind of started like this, and the way it ended up was not pretty.
So what I would recommend is if members of the board are comfortable with this, is let's either consider edits, or the other recommendation would be to disband this policy completely, because as it's currently written, the currently adopted policy is not consistent with our practice.
Well, we don't have a secretary anyway.
Right.
But
and I just want to concur and underscore, and you know some of this, but just a very strong, very central theme of our election campaign was resistance to the fact that previously there was a very strong effort to control information and communication, and we ran to open that up. And part of that is, and it was tough going in the early days, learning what open meetings meant. We all got our hands slapped, maybe me more than anyone, because we forgot to say do not reply or for your information only. I think that's working great now. then I even thought it was like just sort of an extreme. I mean, wait, you know, I invited everyone to a party. That's got to go through someone else. I mean, I think we have to be real careful, and that a lot of this is not in the spirit of what we're trying continuing to do in terms of openness.
And sharing information. Always sharing information, including with you. Yeah, I would certainly be for completely eliminating it, but the only other thing I would suggest is elected officials will communicate in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, but I don't think that needs to be stated in a policy, so.
Yeah, we're sort of sworn into that. I mean,
Yes, we
that's
are.
part of that
Yes.
state law,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think part of the reason is to allow Griffin to make sure that we are not violating the Open Meetings Act.
I still don't want,
No,
I'm
that
just
doesn't-
really
yeah, I
strong
don't think
about
that's
not
a-
having
that's not a
anything
staff member's role, because that would mean
filtered
saying,
anyway.
copy
I
them on
understand the
everything,
intent.
even if it's
Very
not
clear.
appropriate,
Yeah.
in my view. Duffy person.
I think it is important to have Griffin apprised of all the
Yes.
situation
Yeah.
in a very timely manner, because he is our point person. He's the one that's
Right.
here the most. He's going to all the meetings. He knows all the players. He knows the backstory, and he could say, hey, before you respond to that, you might want to think about
Yeah,
this, or this
and he
is
has
happening.
done that, I really appreciate
So
that.
I think that every effort should be made to keep him in the loop in the most timely manner. But I don't like the idea of having to have something approved before sending it out. If one of us were to make a bad judgment call and send out something that was considered deliberation or influential, then that's on us as adults, you know, as elected officials.
I just call him up.
Every day, all day.
So it sounds like the motion that we're looking for is not to adopt the updated electronic communications policy and to disband the existing.
Yeah, I would move to not adopt the updated electronic communications policy and completely disband the one that's in place.
I'll support that.
Okay, any more discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We're almost done. Mike McGuigan has been sitting here very...
Oh.
When you walked in at 6, I almost said, oh.
Oh, you don't want me to talk about water?
No, I meant
No, go and come back.
We hope you stay so long because you have so much to tell us.
Yeah.
So
I hope not.
I know it's not the time that we amend the agenda, but I
Oh.
would hope that we would be able to let Mike go first, so he could...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with Cal.
Well, you're both troopers.
I'll be brief. The, Cal Lake Sewer and Water Authority held 2 meetings last month. The regular meeting was used to basically review the audited financials for the past year. It's just a rough draft at this point, but coincidentally, the only thing that came up was the suggestion that we have a lot of money sitting there, a little bit more than the township, and so the new financial person, Brad Rudich, is coming up with a policy to invest it more effectively, because that was the only thing the accountant said, you're not making much money here. So that was the regular meeting, but in addition, we had a public hearing on the 12th regarding the lead and copper rule, which is going to affect everybody in the United States and will cost a lot of money over the next, you know how long we have before it has to be completely.
I think it's over 20 years, 5% a year.
Yeah, we are in good shape here. Essentially, the EPA has said since the Safe Drinking Water Act was passed in 1976, I think, that we have to meet certain standards, but until Flint happened, people just went along and we had constant excursions. I've used that word before. And suddenly they realized that meant something when we were exceeding allowable levels. So the state has now insisted over a certain period of time, and the federal government, that we have to meet certain levels. luckily, we here haven't missed a number. Over the past couple of years, they require a certain number of sampling sites, and they are concerned with three things: the level of copper, the level of lead, and corrosivity, which is something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. I volunteered to teach anybody here who works in a lab how to calculate it. It's basically kind of a nebulous term, but at this point, the state hasn't even said what they need in terms of corrosivity, because I don't think they understand it either. But we are in really good shape, and if you meet the standards, the number of sampling sites is reduced, and in our township, we're in really good shape. There is the last comment that I'll make is about what I said 2 months ago, that we don't have a meeting of the minds between the various communities. Aaron Sheridan had sat down with Darrell and found out that, and did a little work and found out that there were at least 3 sets of bylaws that had been adopted, and so Bill Lefevre and Barry from Saugatuck are supposed to be getting together this month and suggest some changes that may make the village of Douglas a little bit happier.
Is Bill still on the board?
Yes, he is still on the board. As of last month, I believe he's going to be there on the 23rd. Next meeting is on the 23rd.
He's representing Douglas or Saugatuck Township?
He's the Douglas representative.
Yeah.
Because he lives in the township.
Right.
Oh, how did you do that?
And plus, there's no board member on there then.
Oh, interesting.
Well, we don't either. Yeah,
What?
have a board member.
No, but we only have 1 seat.
Oh, that's right.
Are they on the July 1 fiscal year too, or different?
It must be.
Sounds earlier.
I don't recall exactly what
It's a little early to have an audit
The
done.
auditors were there, 2 of them, to do the report,
All right.
and
That's super soon.
I just assumed they were on the same
Yeah.
calendar. But that,
Do you know offhand? I don't think so. I think they might be on it.
And I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not realistic to think not only would they have the audit conducted, but the audit would.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's why that's what caught my attention, is like, maybe their calendar year, or April 1st. It doesn't matter, but that's just.
as I said, it was just a rough draft.
It's good to hear they have a lot of money, because they're gonna need it for the, lead.
Okay, Mr. Lefevre, what's different?
What did you say?
No, that is the big
Oh, is that
question.
something he said?
No, he is concerned that there will be a major expense. The township doesn't look like it's, and based on the audit so far, the township looks like it's in great shape.
Right.
Because a lot of the homes don't have lead.
Right, those don't,
Yeah,
right.
there is no lead, but as I said, it's gonna affect everybody in the United States.
Oh, yeah, no,
Cities that,
Hey, so
virtually
that's
everything
very-
built before 1980 is gonna have to be fixed, repaired, upgraded. So,
Is there any update on the master meter project?
no, it wasn't even on the agenda in the last month. Mostly because we spent all the time on the audit and the.
At least we spent that money last year, but it'd be nice. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting. We should put committee reports up top here.
Yeah, mix them up.
Mine.
Oh, he's hanging out.
Well, I can speed things along because there was no planning commission meeting last month.
Okay.
We will be meeting next on September 23rd.
Clearly with road commissions, we have things to look at. And chip seal stuff and that kind of stuff. So we will be busy, I think. That's my report.
The Interurban had a record-breaking month. Venetian's Friday night beer tent was hugely successful. Dispatchers in 4 buses, including the Oxbow shuttles, we had 6 buses on the road and carried 680 passengers. Venetian Saturday was 2,515 passengers. So they had some employee issues that they were working through, and that was submitted by Lori Babinski. Fire board.
August almost tied the record for 2006. They reached 102 calls total as opposed to 105 for 2016. 2018 saw an increase 4.1% in call volume at the same time of year. August showed 2 fire calls, a house fire in Fenville is the most resource demanding incident. EMS counted for 66% of the calls. An increase in motor vehicle incidents, 8 for August compared to 6 and 4 for the previous 2 years. Maine Fire Boat 2191 assisted with an overturned fishing boat on Lake Michigan, and the occupants had to be picked up by another fishing boat. On August 28th, the fire department had a ribbon cutting ceremony at the firehouse to unveil the new live fire training facility, and the project was made possible with the collaboration of the communities and the fire departments of Clyde, Fenville, Ganges, Grascup, Hamilton, Holland, and Saugatuck Township. Ken Schellmeyer, the state fire marshal, was able to attend the ceremony and commented on how he has seen other live fire training facilities, and ours is one of the best he's seen. And Saugatuck, along with our partners, are leaders in Michigan firefighting training. Other fire districts have contacted Chief Janik to ask his advice on building similar structures in their communities. Kim Busker of Busker Construction was the engineer and general designer of the structure in alliance with all departments. Jeff Shashagway in the Shag Shop was the welder fabricator. There's a plaque on the building with the names of all the people and companies that donated to this project, and I encourage everyone to check it out because it's really pretty amazing.
Thank you. Park, do you want to do that one for free?
I can. So Jim Searing, the Parks Commission chairperson, was not able to be here, so he passed along 3 notes and then asked if I would do my best to respond to questions. I've attended the last several Parks meetings since I've been here. 3 major takeaways. The Riverbuff Park Bridge and Culvert Replacement Project was completed. You can actually see the expense associated with that earlier in the packet. The Parks Commission will be planting grass in the fall where the contractor also filled in a little area with some excess soil. The Parks Commission is following up with Hurley Stewart, which is the engineering firm that did the initial designing of aspects of the bike trail. There's some pavement cracking north of the fire station that staff is looking into in conjunction with the Parks Commission. And lastly, the sidewalk extension vote that was initially scheduled for tonight was delayed while the Parks Commission discusses some resident concerns and potential alternatives. Can I answer any questions about that?
Is the sidewalk, is that the one near the church?
Yes, that would be connecting, the proposed extension would be connecting the bike trail that along Old Allegan and a line across the sidewalk that already exists across the street from Maple Street. So it would go from Blue Star to Maple Street along Old Allegan.
So you're saying there are residents along the, probably on Maple that are concerned, or?
Yes. So the Parks Commission has received support from the church, and when they went to speak with the residents, there's a home on the corner of Old Allegan and Maple who I've been in discussion with some concerns that the Parks Commission has delayed the vote because it was initially going to be brought before you all tonight, so they can try to consider those concerns and see if they can come up with a more suitable solution.
So on that issue, I mean, how are they? Is our Parks Commission kind of operating independently of the Blue Star Trail people, or is there? I mean, they're kind of related.
So I mean, they're separate entities. Our Parks Commission is an elected
I understand.
board, and they are. I think they are trying to plan projects in conjunction with the Friends of the Blue Star Trail. I know they've been in communication with the Friends of the Blue Star Trail in terms of this sidewalk extension, but that would be a township project. The sidewalk extension would be a township project.
kinda, yeah.
Okay,
I think we need to,
okay, can I clarify?
I'd like to learn more about what they're expecting the expense to be for that.
Okay, we do
And
have.
I don't need it now,
Okay.
just saying, just as, because you've been in meetings, we've had with our trail people, and it kinda strikes me as, maybe this one needs to be put on hold. It just extends our path, trail to nowhere.
Well, what I
Takes
can,
it up to Blue Star, but it's still
well,
not connected.
that sidewalk would connect that trail that's currently not connected on
Right.
either side to existing sidewalk within
I know.
the city of Saugatuck. The only other things I can say is,
But
we
you
currently have quotes for this project. They would need approved by the township board before we would move
Okay.
forward. There is money currently in the budget, but this project will be brought before you all
Okay.
before it proceeds. So I
I just think, I'd like to keep an eye on that one, because
Sure.
again, I mean, it's such, I ride my bike a lot, and, you can ride on the road there.
And if you all as a
A block
board,
and a
you
half
guys-
of road that you could already ride your bike on.
if you all as a board or you all as individual board members have concerns, I would encourage you to have those discussions with, the Parks Commission members, especially as they're gonna be, this is an item that's gonna be on their agenda at their September 10th meeting. Abby, did you have a question I can answer for you?
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to open board report.
I would like to, I mean, yeah, look at me.
I'm looking at you. Looking at you.
I've been asked by a couple of residents if we could start recording the planning commission meetings, and actually, I feel I would like to see them too. So I asked Griffin about it, and he thought that we had enough recording ability, right? To do that, to handle that, so I think maybe we should consider doing that.
That was originally the plan.
Was it? Oh, okay, yes, you're right, I remember that now.
I remember us
Yeah.
stating that, and
Cause that's a
We should
committee
address
that really,
that
yeah,
That's
has
an
a
important-
lot going on, so it'd be nice for all of us to be
disagree.
able to listen.
Should we bring that before the PC for their opinion, or?
I would suggest, if we're able to implement that for the September meeting, the way to talk logistics, if that means you have to stay late again, or, I mean, I don't, or
Not
train
difficult, I
Andy
could
Creed.
train you or Andy
know.
or,
But I think we should just have a conversation with Andy in advance.
right, I agree.
Because as I said, it was publicly stated more than once that we were gonna record board meetings and planning commission.
And that's big, they have big responsibility, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what I was.
and they're hard meetings to go to sometimes, so I really would feel it would help me as a board member with all of this, if we could
That's a
go
good
back
point.
and look at that.
Anything else?
No.
Nothing? I have nothing.
I have a couple housekeeping type things, and I think I've already mentioned it to Griffin, but I'm just curious, and I don't need an answer now, but we had talked before the fiscal year began about redoing all the blacktop, which is severely cracked and full of weeds, and I would just like to see that, and it's budgeted for, so I'd like to see that maybe happen before the snow flies. Another thing, and this has been a tough one for quite a while, our phone system, but I do think we need to address being able to change the general voicemail greeting for holidays. It doesn't say we're closed on Wednesdays. We had a very irate person in the office today, and he was right. He called the office, we don't answer on Wednesdays. I'm also, segue, you can talk me out of it, but I'm starting to feel a little odd about the Wednesday closing, especially right now during tax season. So I'd like to at least be able to open up next Wednesday, because it's the last Wednesday before tax deadline, and I see the people coming up, and they don't all drop theirs in the mailbox. And it dawned on me today, it's kind of awkward to be closed on the day of a board meeting. Someone came in to see the board packet. Just throwing that out there. That's all.
My personal opinion is things are running so much smoother now that maybe this should be looked at again.
No, on the staff that was missing's been replaced.
Right, so,
If I can make a comment to the board, as the manager, I can see where the hours of operation could fall under the day-to-day operations of the township, and if the township board's comfortable, what we can do as a staff who works every day, we can start transitioning back to being open every day, and if we don't find that that's effective for, day-to-day operations, we can revisit in the future, but, with tax season coming up, and, I can confidently say I think the day-to-day operations of the township are back at a point where, we can be available for residents all 5 days a week that we have staff here in the office.
I agree with you. I would even go so far as to say, think about and recommend to us, because again, and I'm just saying this is a possibility based on other townships around us, there could be days that it's not a full 8-hour day, or not. I think we should maybe look at that. I'd rather be open 4 hours on a whatever day it is, Wednesday or Tuesday, rather than closed all day. But again, I agree, and this could take a couple months, but I'd love to hear your feeling as someone who is here all the time, and now you have more than gotten your feet wet, and things are smoother, and the issues about getting payroll done. I mean, 'cause we're used to going to a different office, got that down now.
right.
I view that as if the board is comfortable with leaving that up to the discretion of the manager, I think
that falls under your
we can,
Yep.
we can handle that.
Yep.
Yep. If we don't like it, we'll say so. Sounds good.
Brenda? I'm good, nothing additional.
Manager report.
I only have 3 brief things to go over, with all of you. The first one being just a reminder that the township is still in ongoing litigation. The appellate court rendered a decision, but that situation is still ongoing. I would encourage any questions involved with that to be directed directly to me. That goes as well for members of the township board. If there are specific questions about that situation, please discuss them with me. The township staff, as well as representatives from the fire district, had a really successful site plan review process improvement meeting on Tuesday this week. We are working to streamline some of our processes and address some communication issues that have built up over time. The 3 major takeaways is there will be some ordinance amendments that will be brought before the township board at a future meeting, in terms of making things more consistent. Therefore, both the fire district and staff were not working with inconsistent or 2 different sets of rules. The biggest one being, now that the township board has reinstated aspects of the fire code, there are aspects of our zoning ordinance that need to be in aligned with that. The second one being clarifying communication and the sharing of information, what information needs to be shared and how between our 2 entities. And then lastly, just the updating of documents as we continue to improve this process. What of our forms, what of our permits need updated. Staff is working, and again, I give a lot of credit to Lynn Wells, our zoning administrator, on this. She is working on creating a approvals matrix that outlines what approvals are, what type of approvals need to go to which staff, and which organizations. So I just say for this one, we have taken a big step in the right direction. I really appreciate the patience and the effort from not only the township staff, but the fire district, because Rome wasn't built in a day. There were situations that built up over years, and they're going to take time to address, but I think we've got the right pieces in place, not only with the township staff, but with our relationship with the fire district to really take some big steps here over, the next period of time. And then lastly, I know you all have been looped into some proposed development over the border in Lake Town Township that impacts Saugatuck Township, because of the utility impacts, we are continuing to review the situation with staff and legal counsel, but I do want to pose the question to you all of, at this point, as I am still new and I'm still transitioning into the township and learning expectations, I have the question for all of you is, how involved do you all want to be when it comes to these specific developments? Obviously, when there are decisions that have to be made, those situations will be brought to the township board, but as we move forward and as these situations are not black and white, there's a lot of gray area. Just looking for confirmation that the township board's comfortable with staff continuing to proceed as we have been on these situations, or if there's more information you all are looking for, we can continue to do that as well.
Can you send us an email?
Well, you put the, I mean, you're doing pretty detailed updates in your weekly report.
Correct.
Right.
And I guess what I'm looking for is the information that is currently being shared with all of you suffice what you all are looking for in terms of knowing the operation and what is going on. Okay.
Yeah, so complicated, we might ask the same question
Well,
over
and
and over and over, but.
That's the exact point I'm getting at is this specific situation and others I'm sure we will be involved in the future. They are very complex and, you know, when it comes to getting legal opinions and just, there's a number of moving parts, and at what point, I am looking to make sure that I am meeting all your expectations when it comes to at what point you all are being brought in the loop. At this point, what I have done and what I will continue to do unless directed otherwise is those continued updates, and then when decisions have to be made, of course, those will be brought to the township board. If there's, I guess where I leave this is if there is a different expectation or there are other information you are looking for, I'm just looking for the township board to direct me otherwise.
Yeah, and to that point and to that specific project, a concern I would say that I have is, and I don't know how we work this out, but at what point and juncture is it appropriate for you to get more guidance from us in terms of the amount of time it takes of you? Because there could be incidences, one comes to mind, where, you know, we might say, wow, well, you're going to all these meetings or having all these meetings here, and we see this as maybe more of a long-term, down the road, less, I don't know how we sort that out. I mean, we get the luxury of being able to talk more, but I could see a situation where if you're not getting much feedback or guidance from us, you could be eaten up, time-wise.
Sure,
and that's my concern. So think about that, because you might have to give us some guidance on how to guide you on that, but that could happen.
That is also part of the underpinning of why I wanted to bring this up today, is right now, again, if the township board's comfortable, I'll continue to use that discretion in terms of advancing all of your priorities and managing all the other things we have going on, but you're 100% correct. In the future, we may get to a point where I need guidance on where you all want my time being spent. Part of what's going to help us with that is, again, once I continue to transition in and we get our heads back above water, is doing some board goal setting in terms of clearly outlining the township board's priorities, and that will then be that adopted document that I can fall back on when it goes to where my time needs to be being spent. But that's a great way to phrase that in terms of that's what I'm looking to at least put on all of your radar right now is, you know, is this the 11th or the 12th week now and caught up on not everything, but a number of things where pretty soon we will be getting to a point where I'm going to need direction on what are the priorities because of the capacity of our organization, in more layman's terms, there's not enough hours in the day.
Right.
And
No,
I wanna make sure I'm meeting all of your expectations,
and you're a one-man band.
in a lot of sense.
I mean, maybe one thing to think about is in the weekly report update, if there's any project that you're summarizing that, you know,
You think
you feel should be a red flag about timing, say so. I mean, or just say, you know, staff request input on, you know, how much time we should be spending on this. Because it could be a case, it's important, but we understand what you're juggling, you know, boards can get more involved as well. And they, you know, depending on the project, a lot of us have been, we come into something, then we don't, back off, but, yeah.
And this specific
Don't be afraid to speak
situation
up
where
like
this
that.
comes from, I think the reason I bring this up is, this is a development from outside, that is occurring outside of our jurisdiction.
Right.
So yes, we are involved because it has impacts on our utilities, so we are involved and we need to be involved in that discussion. But it's also important to recognize that this is not a development that is going to increase our tax base directly. So that's part of the reason I bring this up, is just so you all know that this is a very complex situation, and like other things, it needs time, we need to be involved in it, but how does that balance with the number of other priorities? That's the end of my report, unless there are any other questions there.
Do we need to talk about Friday on R.J. Peterson, or are we supposed to RSVP to you or him or something? Do you have any?
It sounds like you just show up if you're interested, doesn't it?
Okay, just
I don't know.
I mean,
clarify.
that message that was forwarded on to all of you,
Yeah.
again, the reason it's not included in the correspondence was it wasn't to the township board.
Right.
It was to the managers, but I share that with all of you because it's looking for discussion and input from all of you.
Oh, we're not supposed to go?
No, it's requested, it's
Oh,
requested
okay,
you
all
all to
right,
go,
yeah, I'm
managers
gonna go.
are not
Yeah.
invited.
It's
Oh,
weird.
okay.
Or that's my understanding of
I
it.
say show up, but.
Oh, you can,
You all have all the information I have on that topic.
I think it'd be beneficial if you went, actually.
Maybe we should just clear that up.
Well, I plan to go.
You're gonna clear it up?
No, I'm gonna go.
Oh, okay.
I'm going.
Dean said he was going. And again, I think seriously, I think any manager that wants to come should just come.
Yes, I don't think.
I can follow up with him
You might-
this week
it'd be
and
fun.
see if he's looking for managers
Yeah.
to be there.
Or does he want a number? Does he, I don't know, how big is his boat? I don't know.
You got big balls.
I would imagine it's huge.
Yeah.
He has a key line.
Okay. We'll take pictures. You're on a boat, you live on a boat.
Kind of. That's Friday, yeah.
Well, I'd like to,
No public comment.
oh, there's more public comment.
Public comment.
And the public's still here.
Any public comment?
I want to say thank you,
Thank
really,
you for-
to watch all of you and to observe this and the conscientiousness with which you address all the things on your table. It's a wonder to behold. I want to thank you all. The clear-mindedness of the manager and the conscientiousness of all of you is truly a wonder. In regard to the issue I brought up, thank you for discussing it, and I thank the township for advocating on behalf of the people in the township and disseminating information, letting people know what's happening in regard to that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the other public.
Yes, do you have any comments?
I did have a thought when we were discussing Roundup. In my years of reviewing chemicals, I am fairly certain it's against federal law to discharge any chemicals that aren't approved onto wetlands or into a body of water.
They just say that on there.
It is absolutely certain that within 2 feet of Jim's property is wetlands on 3 sides and the body of water. And I believe that the road commission is probably violating their own policy.
It's nice to hear you say that, because the road commissioner came out, and in his letter to me, he said he did not see the water, that everything was done according to
He
specifications.
didn't see the water?
So that's why it's really helpful that if not just me, I appreciate your help.
You know, down here by Clearbrook, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, that's right on Clearbrook Creek, and I noticed that half of that was all brown, like they must have sprayed it. I don't know, maybe
It is
Clearbrook,
absolutely a fact.
Yeah.
The vice president of U.S. Steel put in handcuffs when they discharged into Lake Michigan. And there is a designated jailee somewhere who can go to jail. Because I'm fairly certain I never saw Roundup on the list of approved.
Because we like doing this, do you wanna, forward that email and you can look at all the
Well, I've got Jim's.
Oh, you got it?
Because I-
Okay.
No, I think she needs a 28-page.
Oh, the one.
Yeah, is it
Yeah,
a
that's
what?
probably just this is the chemical and the.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes on and on, but maybe you would
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah,
You might,
I've
yeah.
seen those before.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd
Yeah.
be glad to, but I would, as I said, my first thought was, you can't spray that stuff on wetlands or put it in water, and if he didn't see water, then he's blind, and he shouldn't be the road commissioner.
Well, I think
I'm
there's
sure he's
fears
really
there.
nice guy.
I think
But I
there's-
drive by it every day, I live 300 yards, 300 feet from the gym.
Oh, yeah, you do live
Yeah.
right there, yeah.
I promise you, there's water there, and there has been all summer.
Okay, we can continue this discussion after the meeting.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I'll move to adjourn this meeting.
I'll say.